That ends that conversation.
I could tell by your facial expression how it was going. So
So
That's not been a
We're
good.
going to discuss this.
we can. Full time.
Oh,
it's every 4 years,
Well, the election's next November.
so you gotta talk about it.
No, we went to Sheila's.
You gotta talk about it in the next, I think 30 days. Where the code reads. Hey. Yeah.
You better write that down, Gene.
Yeah, I better write
Get
that
it on the
down.
agenda.
Gene. I don't think it's ever been an agenda item.
It hasn't. We are being recorded, so Carol, but I don't want to be at that
Yeah.
meeting, so do it
Ah,
on the 14th of
Don't
February,
move.
please.
What did you write on the
if the
back
rest of
there?
us gotta be, you're gonna be too. I don't wanna be there.
I don't want to be there either. No, I'm just kidding.
I know what you, I just about to,
Are you guys on Wednesday? Yeah.
I wrote it down. Now if I keep that piece of paper.
I'll write it down next week. Actually, he just called when I was
I was
upstairs,
gonna
but I
let you
didn't take
know
the
about
phone
it.
call because I wouldn't get back to me.
I just want to get an agenda for that. item 30.
Oh, okay, yeah, you mentioned something about that. Is that okay to do that next week?
Yeah, that's what I told him.
Okay.
Probably do it next week. We want it today. Okay, if everybody will join me to pledge allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, first thing we have on the agenda is to approve the agenda, and I would like to make an addition to that as 3A SCH.
With that addition, I will make a motion to approve the agenda.
And I apologize for not having that on. That was my fault. Okay, it's
You have a
been moved.
second?
And
I thought
second,
I heard it.
any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion carried. Okay, next is approval of the minutes from last week.
Read the minutes, I thought they looked very good. I make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from December 13th. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion carried. Okay, the first thing we have on the agenda is the compensation board fiscal year 23 salary recommendation. Mike?
Carroll County Compensation Board met the 7th of December, had a lot of good discussion, including all the supervisors that were there. You're all in receipt of the, I believe, the memo for the recommendation of Carroll County supervisors for the 28% for the sheriff, 22 for the auditor, 12 for the treasurer, 18 for the recorder, 20 for the Carroll County attorney, 12 for the supervisors. So we'd like to submit that recommendation for your consideration.
In regard to that meeting, I did reach out and do some checking, and there was some talk about stipends. And that does have to be done by the compensation board, so probably have to worry about that next time. I did check that out, so.
So it's off the table for this year.
That's off the table for this year unless they want to meet again, but. And I don't think that,
That was one of the part of the conversation you guys had, and I wasn't sure where it generated.
I thought too, everybody was under the impression.
But I do know there are counties that do that. Yeah.
Specifically, kind of like a stipend to do the budget, what we had talked about.
Yeah, kind of similar to that.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation. I'll make a motion to accept the receipt of the recommendation of the Carroll County Compensation Board for the year 2022.
okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the receipt of the recommendation. And we will probably take up action. I assume that we'll take that up at a later date. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah,
Mike,
thanks,
and
Mike.
thanks to the Compensation Board for a vigorous and discussion.
Yeah, one of our biggest.
Okay.
Most discussion, that's good.
Yep.
Happy holidays.
Thanks, Mike.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Did you have the second on that, Rich?
Hey, Mike.
Okay, next we have is the 2022 commercial insurance renewal with Terry Axel.
Thank you. Good morning.
Right.
I think last week Courtney distributed the summary of insurance for everybody, so I'm not going to go through that line by line, but what you have there is a summary that shows locations, values, deductibles, liability limits, and then at the very end is a summary of the premiums. And I want to get into what happened there, but I also want to make first, there's a change of $196 increase to that. The reason for that is Ken got back to me last week after I had distributed that to Courtney for the jail is now substantially complete. We've added that to the policy, but we had to upgrade it a little bit on some of the value for some of the contents that was in there. So that increased it by $196. So the total is actually $278,996.
So what did you put on the value of that building?
The value of the building, I'd have to go back and look in here.
Because I think it showed in here like when it was under construction, that the bond is
Right, right.
and it's actually more than that.
Right.
Okay.
And we'll have to go back in there. And I would say this, if any of you wanted to set a time and come visit with me and go through everything on a detailed basis, I would be more than happy to entertain that. In the lieu of time, I don't want to go into specific line by line on every one, but I do want to kind of hit the highlights of everything. And unfortunately, the biggest highlight is it took about a 19% increase. And I want to explain that and do a couple things. First of all, one of the primary causes, as we were speaking earlier, the derecho hit us a couple of years ago. And while property carriers were kind of reeling from that, they started increasing rates. We actually caught a break because the county's ICAP rates went up last year, but they didn't take effect until February 1. Ours renews January 1, so we caught a little bit of a break that we didn't get that. Then when we took a rate increase for this year, which I'll explain some things why, we actually got hit twice, a rate increase from a year ago and then the second one. The reason for that, again, they were coming through the ratio, and for whatever reason, I can't explain it, but I'm sure you're all aware, building costs just have skyrocketed. So if you had a piece of or a building out there for 200,000, now that building to replace it would be 300,000 or 350. I mean, it just went through the roof. So on the property side, those reasons are reflective of why the rates went up. The biggest thing, though, that we've seen, and I want to relate this to the condition of insurance everywhere. It's not just to the county, it's not to you specific, and it's not even municipalities. It's the state of the insurance industry everywhere. We're seeing a huge increase in liability claims, and not only the number of claims, but the severity of claims. Again, that's not specific to you. I think, did you guys also get a summary of the claims? You actually had, I think, 32 claims in the last 3 years for about 145,000, which is pretty good. I mean, that's not bad. But
I don't.
Yeah, I don't
they did not get that.
No,
Okay.
that's my fault.
And we'll not go into specific claims for privacy, but pass those out to everybody. My apologies. I thought that was, sure if that was in there. So you can see on there was a total of 32 claims at 148,000 of total incurred losses, 148,550. And like I mentioned, what we've seen again industry-wide is severity in liability, and the liability is primarily cyber liability and employment practices liability. And so we've seen an uptick in those substantially, and those have led to the 19% increase that we've seen. Now, knock on wood, hopefully we'll be stable now for a while. Do you have any other questions about the packet itself? Because like I said, I'm not going to go into detail on line by line coverages, but I want to focus on a couple of things that are a little bit more positive.
You know, my biggest was that the jail that was covered for.
Right. And what we may do is have one of the services they provide is building valuations. They can come through and they can kind of look, because a jail is pretty unique structure. And so we want to come back and like I said, by the time they, what you bid it for and what has happened since it started is, everything has gone up. And so we do want to make sure that we're thinking. One of the nice things about the coverage that you have is part of a blanket. So you look at the total, all your structures throughout the county. And so not that we want to be underinsured, but we add all of them together and lump it. So the only way you would be underinsured is if every building basically got wiped out. So there is some reassurance there, and that's a benefit of the program that you have. Dr. You pass.
So Terry, how much of that 19% roughly was the $148,000 in claims? On those 32 claims?
Virtually nothing.
Okay, so most of it's natural disasters.
Yeah, it really is not. There's nothing that you've done specifically that has harmed you, as far as or been a detriment to your rating. I mean, they certainly look at those things if it gets out of hand, and they work with. What I'm distributing to you is one of the benefits that ICAP has done and COVID has done is made them take a look at enhancing the services that they provide you. So on the handout, the sheet is just a page, a snapshot of their website that you can go to. And you can click on some of the services that they offer, and they've really increased and enhanced some of the things. And I won't go again in detail with all of them. The book will go through a little bit more, but there's things like the ICAP grant. Every year you get $1,000 for safety grants, and that's per entity. So like the county gets it, emergency management, E911, the comm center, and I think Ken has kind of coordinated those in the past, and they put them together for a drone, I think cameras, a number of things. So that's one thing that a benefit that they've done. Under law enforcement, they give training that's available to all law enforcement, sheriffs, police departments to go through things like proper use of tasers, etc. They've got legal access. You've got 300 minutes of access to attorneys at Hopkins and Huebner, who are kind of specialists in municipality law. So it can be things like zoning, contracts, employment, open record laws. You've got up to 300 minutes where you can talk to those people and say, hey, we're thinking about this. Is this going to be a violation of zoning? We don't want to get in trouble. So they've enhanced. That used to be 3 hours. Now they've gone up to 5 hours to give you that benefit. They've given some things for member education. They have a resource library online where I've talked to Zach and your safety committee. We can show up and we can say, okay, we want to look at loss control. What's going on? We've got slips on the courthouse steps. Maybe we need to put, some type of adhesive down. So there's just a lot of things that have happened there to help eliminate some of the potential for losses. And it's a service that's free. And there's a few others. And again, I'll be more than happy to go through all of them in detail if you look at it and have questions. But that has really been kind of a nice feature that they've had, that they've upgraded those, and it's a benefit, and we encourage you to take advantage of the department heads, whether it's secondary roads, the sheriff departments, any of those folks, can come to us and sit down and go through videos on what it is, whether it's forklift training or whatever. There's a vast array of items that they can take a look at. So that is kind of the focus on what they've looked at and trying to improve this year. Like I said, again, I don't like to bring the bad news of the increase, but I hope it makes sense. My job is to explain what's happening. In lieu of that, ICAP still represents 76 of the 99 counties. There's 10 other counties that belong to the Heartland Pool, similar to what ICAP is. They were formed about the same time as ICAP. There's never been a member left. There's never been anybody that's joined. And there's about 3 counties that are self-insured. They just have large deductibles. And then that leaves about 10 others, I believe, if my math is right, that are in the open market with primarily employers mutual writing, I think 8 of them. And then I think there's 1 county that is with Continental Western and 1 is with somebody, maybe Travelers. So you're still a part of a group that's entitled to do nothing but work for you. You're a member of it. There's no profit motive, so they give back in ways like these enhancements to services. There's no profit motive. They give back the profits to you as members through services. They did not give a dividend or last year. It's not really a dividend, but it's a refund check, so to speak. And hopefully we can get back to that if we get rid of deratios. We never heard of the deratio, and now we've got 2 of them in the last couple of years. Kind of went through that really quickly and kind of at a high level, but I'll be happy to entertain any questions. And again, if you'd like to take time some other time and go through everything in detail, I'd be more than happy to schedule a meeting with you and to go through it.
So on these 12 places to get $1,000 grant, do they have to apply for that, or is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how much of that money did we use last year?
All of
Oh,
them.
okay.
I mean, I work with a lot of counties, and it's hard to believe you just about have to beg sometimes to get these entities to take it.
Oh,
But
that's a good
Courtney's
thing.
very good about, I work with Zach on that, and then I get with Courtney and we start, it's got to be applied for, and you guys have gotten all yours for this year. It's got to be applied for by December 31st, and usually by December, if we haven't done it, I'm getting on the horn.
Terry's not gonna let us forget.
Yeah.
No, that's a good thing. I was gonna say, if they're not utilizing that. yeah.
No,
Courtney probably is sick of me hounding.
no,
her for
I
that.
appreciate it because there's a lot of stuff going on and you don't always remember everything.
Terry, you talked about valuations. If there's a loss, what valuation does the company work off of? The latest and greatest valuation,
Well, they'll
or
come
an
in.
estimate of what today's value is?
Today's value is what they're going to look at, and obviously it's increased. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's a moving target, and it's a problem in our industry. I mean, there's no magic bullet because, the building materials went up 200%. Now they've come back down, and I don't know exactly kind of what day it is to figure out where they're at. But what they're going to look at is they're going to come in there and say, okay, we insured it for this at the time of the policy renewal. So, okay, we tried our best to establish what it is. And we can't go through it and do this on a monthly basis. And they realize that. But so, like I said, they give us some leeway on there so that if we come in there and you've got a maintenance shed, for example. Now, and again, keep in mind that maintenance shed or whatever is part of the grand envelope of all your coverages. So all those buildings are lumped together, for a total value. And so it's hard to be underinsured on. I mean, we want to
So everything's replacement value.
Yes, it is replacement. It's not, they're not gonna do actual cash value, take into account depreciation on buildings. They will on vehicles and that sort of thing. I mean, they're not gonna replace a 2005 Chevy pickup with a 2022.
That's something you think we need to do? You think if that's something we, has any value that we should be having them come in and start looking at everything we've got?
Courtney, do you remember when they came in and did, Northwest Valuations came in and
I don't think it was last year, but maybe the year
I was
before.
gonna say 2 or 3 years ago, they came in and they did that. Now, again, that's pretty much obsolete because
Well,
stuff has gone through the roof, but it gave us a pretty good baseline.
Right.
And what a lot of insurance companies will do is they provide what's called an inflation guard, and it'll be a 2 or 4 or 6% automatic increase. A lot of them have bumped that up this year to 8 or 10% because, again, things have gone up a lot more. And that's not the most scientific thing, but you can't go out and reevaluate and plug in every building every year. There's just not enough time and appraisals in there to do that. So we try to do this the best we can.
As far as equipment, do we have so many days to put that on the list?
Yes.
And, yeah, because I see there's one new piece that's not on there that's quite high priced, that grade all.
Well, and keep in mind that some of the graders are insured on a separate policy with Gredemans, I believe. So
And that,
I think that was added to
is that on
the Gredeman policy. We just got an invoice from them.
Okay. All right.
I can't remember if it said grade all or grader on the invoice, but I'm thinking it said grade
Like
all.
grade all's 424,000, so.
And that would be going in to be paid this next month.
So our claims were basically low, 32 claims.
32 claims and 148,000. So, that's over 3 years. So we're just under 50,000 a year. And, you look at your ratio of what your premium is and if you're under 50% loss ratio, that's not too bad. I mean, that's where companies want to see you. And you were definitely under that. I don't know exactly on the map.
So all the deductibles for everything is $10,000. Yeah, so can you explain that? I mean, so you've got a courthouse and a jail. I think between the combination, it would be like $20 million, but the deductible is $10,000. When you have a building out at Swan Lake or something, that's $40,000. You have a $10,000 deductible.
Mhm.
Can we look at the deductible and increase the deductible on some and lower the premium?
You can increase the deductible and lower the premium, yes. But I mean, I don't know that you're gonna, your example, that you're not gonna be able to put a $5,000 deductible on the shelter house at Swan Lake and then a $50,000 deductible on the courthouse.
Why not?
Well, I mean, you can do that, but I don't know if it's gonna save you any money if you're gonna lower it on one and raise it on the other. I mean, we can take a look at that. You'd
Well, I mean,
you'd have to give me an idea.
I
something,
mean,
what-
I would think on a the combination of the jail and the courthouse, you got a $20 million structure, and you have, I think, a relatively low deductible for $10,000.
I think if you had a loss in a building that was 40, you'd probably absorb that when you turn it in. If you a total loss, yes, but like if you just had something.
Right, and the majority of losses aren't like total losses, they're partial
Right.
losses, so you.
I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at. I mean, if you had a total, I think if there was going to be a claim on this structure, it'd probably be a total loss. A fire that would go through it, or something, or bigger ratio, and that type of thing. I guess I'm not saying to be a total loss. I mean, you could take the roof off, and I don't know. I know when I redid my insurance, that's one thing that we looked at, and I was able to lower my premium considerably by raising my deductible. And that's the same way with health insurance too. I mean, anytime you raise the deductible, you're gonna lower the premium. Does that make any sense to anyone else?
What do you guys want to do?
I don't know, just, if you just wanna look at it, I mean, you can.
You can change it at any
Yeah.
point in time. I mean, you don't have to change it today. I mean, so like I said, if you want to look at it and discuss it and change it in a month or 2 months, you know, it doesn't have to be done with renewal. Any changes are. Just for my direction, what would be a maximum deductible? I mean, and I'll have to see what they offer.
I don't know, I'm just thinking that, you know, when, I don't know how you work that. When you said it was, you're probably not gonna save a lot of money by individually going down.
Well,
I think what you're getting at, Dean, is that there's this size structures at 10,000, you go out there, it's the same deductible on a building that's probably only
Yeah,
worth.
there's 25%, here it's about 1%.
Well, like
of
a
the
the
value.
salt shed in Coon Rapids, the value is $99.42 and the deductible is $10,000.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't even turn that in, I wouldn't think, so.
Yeah, you're right, you would even turn that on insurance if you had it.
I'll get back to them.
Yeah, I don't know, it just,
I'll see what's available and what kind of percent. Hopefully they can say, okay, if you go to $25,000 deductible, the property premium would go down.
well, it can be, you know, every one of these is 10,000. All the way down. So what if we raised it to 12,000?
And keep in
Or
mind,
we raised it on that dollar amount, that's gotta make some kind of difference.
oh yeah, it would make difference. And keep in mind that the deductible is a per occurrence. So if you had a storm that hit and it took out 3 buildings, you're only gonna have to one. And so if you had a building with $5,000 deductible, like a building with $10,000 deductible, and 25, they'll impose the highest of the 3 deductibles.
So is that a per building deductible or
Per
a
occurrence.
event
Per occurrence.
per occurrence?
So if you have, like I said, a windstorm that
So-
came through and got more than one particular building.
If you change it to say $15,000, there are several buildings on that list that would be non-existent. You wouldn't even
Yeah.
report.
Yeah, you
So,
know,
and I get that part, but that also is a driving factor of the bigger ones at $15,000. That's what the rate would come in more in our favor
Mhm.
because we're already paying. I get both sides of this.
Well, it won't take much for me to look at it.
Yeah.
And then,
Well,
like I
I
said, I
mean,
can
you
report
know,
back to Dean.
we got the old barn out there, its value is $31,000, you know, if that thing blows over. Probably not gonna replace it, so, you know, I mean.
Yeah.
Are there some of these things that do we really even want on it?
We give this
You know?
list to Courtney. Courtney gives it to the department heads to go through
Okay.
to tell me what. you know,
Because there are some things I think are not on that list. They take them off, especially equipment.
Yeah, there wasn't a ton of changes this year, but there was a
Yeah,
few.
but that's, the departments make that choice.
Yeah, sure.
And I just take my orders and what they want.
Next year, we could give the board the list and just go around
We could X them up?
and- I mean, you could. They give it to us in plenty of time. I mean.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions for the gentleman? Just check it out.
I'll get back to Dean.
Okay,
Do you have?
thanks, Terry.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Josh, thanks, Terry. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, I'll let you know.
Do a public hearing for this, or-
No, you can could do the manure management though. We'll get rid of
Okay,
it.
we'll do manure management. Next, we have manure management annual updates. We have Justin Sawyer, section 23 of Richmond Township, no changes.
Merry Christmas.
Matt Galen, section 31, yeah, Merry Christmas. Pleasant Valley Township, no changes. WJR Port Site 20, section 26 of Arcadia Township, no changes. WJR Port Site 40, section 35 of Arcadia Township, no changes. Those are our manure management annual updates for today. Okay,
Maybe plats. We got 3 minutes.
now let's go do the plats. We're gonna make these plats.
Plats. I like to.
There was another one that, but you didn't get that one yet?
There was another, well, yeah, these, today we have to.
So we have, the first one is through Margaret H. L. Revocable Trust. And then we have one for Mary Jo and Russ Steinkamp. That's another portion we're selling off the acreage. Any questions on those two plats? One is just strictly dividing up some property, and then the other one is, and
Increasing the acreage.
yeah, that's kind of down to the north, the town follows a waterway.
Pasture.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a pasture in their waterway. I'll make a motion to approve both plats.
it's been moved and second. Any further discussion? I'm trying to kill time. If not, motion carried. Or if not, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion carried. Okay.
The real close.
All right, I gotta get out of this. Okay, next we have is a public hearing on election precinct boundaries. Want to explain that, Courtney, to us? Is this,
You guys should have gotten information Sarah sent. The proposed plan
is
and the
that that?
numbers.
Oh, okay.
I'm assuming you all received that. So, their recommendation has not changed. They're adding some acres to. let's see here.
Some acres?
District- Or sections,
Sections.
adding some sections to District 3. and taking away. from
There's a bigger map right here, so that Sarah brought down this morning, if you want to look at it.
So if you want to open the hearing, we can.
Okay, we will open the public hearing in regard to election precinct boundaries. And we have received a recommendation from the redistricting committee to include approximately 6 sections of property out of Maple River Township added to District 3 and take them away from District 2. And that does not include in unincorporated village of Maple River. That stays all in District 2. Has there been any written comments?
I have received none.
Is there any oral comments or anything, any comments online?
No comments online.
If not, I will close the public hearing. And that's at 9:31.
So the next step, well, and we can do the reading after we do SCH, but the next step will be reading the ordinance. And then there's a city-county precinct agreement that we need to approve in order for us to have Maple River Township voters vote in the city of Carroll, you have to have an agreement with the city to allow our township people to vote in their precinct, which has been an ongoing thing for quite a while. So we can do that. And then next week, we'll have our second reading of the ordinance, and you guys can choose whether or not to have a third. You can waive that third reading if you want, and then we'll move forward with getting the ordinance published.
We could actually waive it right today after approval. You know?
I think you have to have a second.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's, we'll do that later. Let's go ahead with SEH right now. John?
Sure. Yeah, apologize. I should have probably sent you a reminder too that.
You don't need to apologize.
Yeah, well,
I'm the one that.
It's that time of year too.
But before you get started,
Sure.
this is the reports. Final here.
It's huge.
So you got that. There's one that's a lead for you. You want to go over this or just want to go?
Well, I guess I'd like to say that we're here to really talk about a couple things. One is our final submittal on the needs assessment portion of the project. So I think we all agree really on that part of the process. We're really wrapping up that portion of the project and submitting these final documents. Really, this is our deliverable to y'all. So I think we're all very familiar with that report and what it includes. The preliminary cost assessment is in there, and also what's in there is the building program. So you gain quite a good bit of information off of that planning process. And the next step for this, we were asked to provide a proposal for services for that particular project. So to give that to you, pass that out today. And really what this is it says services fee proposal. That's not 100% correct. It's a scope of services proposal without the fee attached to it. We want to make sure that we have
Without the one.
without the fee, without our fee attached. So we want to make sure that we have the entire scope sort of, sorted out with you before we put a fee to it. So with that said, and backing up, are there any final questions on the assessment portion of the project or comments? I guess you're getting your final package today, so we'd be able to answer any final questions on that. So through that process, we sort of circled back to where we started with what the intention of the project is. So it's to replace the HVAC system in the building that's, as we've discovered, really in need of being replaced and also upgraded to meet current codes. So that's a portion of the project. Another, and this is kind of going over the highlights of what we have written here in the proposal. The intention is to provide more room for the treasurer and driver's license function in the building. So with that said, that would require a move of that department in the building to give them more space. So in doing that, we would displace the Board of Supervisors meeting room and the auditor's office. So need to find new locations for those, which we have proposed. So the second component would be renovating the old treasurer space for the auditor, and then remodeling this area for the Board of Supervisors meeting room. And lastly, and I'd like to kind of go into this a little bit further, is ADA upgrades for the building. We talked about the restroom. We didn't talk really in depth about parking, which would not be too in depth, but I think we would like to know whether or not that's included in the next phase of the project. So commonly with ADA, the way the code reads, my interpretation of it is that when you're doing a renovation project, a portion of that money should go towards ADA improvements in an existing building. And the place you start is on the exterior of the building, getting parking up to date. and then moving into the building. Your front entry doors, in my opinion, are okay, they're fine, in terms of you. So moving inside the building, then would be the restroom upgrade as well, so. I guess the presumption we would make is that you would want to update the parking as well in the next project, so you can let us know that. That's something you prefer to do or not.
Is that something the American Rescue Plan 9 covers? I mean, that's not a given, is it?
I would say it's probably
I'd
not,
say no.
no.
I would say no also.
Right, yeah, if I had to guess. I would say that there's quite a bit of this project that would be covered under the American Rescue Plan. And that question was asked to us if we could help determine that, what can be covered, what we can't cover with the Rescue Act funds. And the answer from SEH is that you probably need to speak with the public. I can't remember how exactly Lucas worded it, but either an attorney or somebody that can really speak on behalf how to spend those dollars. So I know City of Omaha, State of Nebraska went to Deloitte, who does that sort of thing. City of Lincoln, Nebraska, I think use their own in-house services to sort that out.
I don't think that we want that to be part of your scope.
No,
I don't think, I don't.
No,
I don't think it can really.
And this is
Okay.
where your last email kind of said, because when Lucas was out here, he sure was pushing that fact that they were aware of what monies to be spent in American Recovery, and almost like that they had staff that were dealing with that.
Right.
And now, and I understand they're doing it for libel reasons, but I wasn't asking for a hard drop answer either.
Well, you know, and we just had the insurance renewal, and he said we have so many hours with attorneys, you know, that might be a good question to ask them.
I don't think they do. Well, they
Probably,
may
I don't
be,
know. I mean, other counties are probably the same.
but I wanted to hear that.
I understand.
That was, because when I walked down this hall, he was, that's before you got involved, and that did not set well,
Understood.
and that's all I'm gonna say. I got that here, just along here. Okay, continue on.
John, before you move on, you talked about ADA parking places. Do those all have to be in one spot? Can they be all in one spot?
Yeah, well, interpreting the code, what the code says is that number one, and I'm going from memory here, I think you need one stall for 25 parking stalls.
Okay.
That might be up to a certain number, and then maybe it decreases. I'm not 100% sure on that, but the count is important. So however many stalls you have, the number of stalls required is an important aspect of that. Also, another important aspect is with the stalls, you need automobile parking, and you also need van. Percentage of the overall stalls need to be van accessible. So right now you have, in my mind, 2 van accessible parking stalls nearest the front door. Another component to it too is that the ADA parking needs to be on the closest path to the building front door. So,
Okay, so
yeah,
it has to be a designated front door or a door.
I think the way the code reads is the closest path to get to the front door. So your question is,
I'm
yeah, there's 2
thinking
different doors.
This parking lot out
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
It would be easy to make all ADA parking.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track there.
Sorry.
You don't over here,
You're talking about the library.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. Okay.
and you've got access to the elevator. So, but what I'm
Yeah.
guessing, where I'm headed is that entire parking lot could be tagged as ADA. And might suffice the total number of spaces. And I don't remember how many
Sure.
total spaces we even have, to tell you the truth.
Right. I think that'll be part of the,
Okay, now but then let's look at this a little different. We got a lot of spaces out here, but majority of those spaces are not utilized by this building.
they're part of the jail as well.
Well,
the-
but I mean, even between the jail
Retail
and this
also,
building,
retail.
it's
Okay.
mostly retail.
Right.
So I think we want to take a certain amount of them numbers out of it.
Well,
I don't think we
I'm
can.
afraid ownership is gonna
I
be the
know,
biggest
but-
card that gets played, and we own it all, so.
That's why when you go to some stores and they have a huge parking lot. Well,
Mhm.
there's tons of handicap spots, but
Right.
if they have to have so many per spot,
Right.
it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. That, to meet the code, you really have to follow, each letter of the code and follow the spirit of it. I think, I understand what you're saying too, and I think it's right. I mean, if people do park over on the east side, there ought to be a couple ADA stalls there as
Yeah.
well, and not only for your building, but also for the library, as
I
well.
have no
So,
problem sharing it all.
yeah, I think in fairness, it would be a lot easier to bring the east parking lot up to ADA code, obviously than your entry drive with those two stalls. So, I do think though, for somebody that comes to visit the courthouse and their intention is to come in on the upper first floor, you probably ought to have, a spot or two there as
Okay.
well. But if you need more than those two stalls, then looking at other options would probably, because, somebody might want to come into the building and be on this floor for a meeting in the future. So,
Okay.
So basically what you're talking about, just paying a couple stalls under their ADA, so it's not, we're not talking a lot of dollars here.
hopefully not. I think.
Not over here.
Yeah.
We are over here.
Up front.
Well, that's because they said the slope is.
The slope
Yeah.
is the problem.
And I did put that in the estimated cost.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
Yeah.
So it has to be level, basically.
Has to be level. Well, I think it's a 1% slope, which is one inch.
Well,
I think it's an inch for every 10 feet.
Quarter inch per foot, I think.
Quarter
Yeah,
inch.
so an inch per.
you're not gonna be able to obtain that out
Pardon me?
there. You're gonna be able to obtain that out there.
Oh, you can. I mean, you come up and then you level.
Think you,
So the
You
approach
have
is
to
might be a
you have
little
to pour new
steeper.
concrete.
I think what you're running into is redoing a good majority of that.
Yep.
Entire drive though, at the end of the day.
But we hired you guys for HVAC, not the parking lot, right?
Well, he's part of the.
That's part of this proposal is
Okay.
what is the intent? What would you like us to do? We're proposing that we would have civil engineers, that could do that sort of work. And some of this is being sorted out. I can go on my presumptions and understanding of the codes and whatnot, but I think we do want to talk to your ADA representative here locally.
I guess that's my next question is in your experience, if we get to tinker too much in here, do we have to get out there and do some tinkering also?
Right, and that's something we would need to find out through talking to different, call them authorities having jurisdiction, but whoever in town really, oversees that sort of thing.
Okay.
We would certainly want to have conversations with them.
Yeah.
Make sure that we, I think overall, big picture, I don't think the cost relative to the entire project is large, but it might not be covered by the American Rescue Plan dollars. I don't know that. personally.
Okay. I didn't want to beat a dead horse there. I just kind of want a little clarification.
Sure, absolutely. That's what we're here for, really.
All
It's just to get a really good understanding of where the county's at with what, y'all would like to do and things we could propose to do for the project too, and that'll help get us to a fee. I'm gonna back up a little bit on the fee. We've already gained a lot of knowledge with the fee that we've already been paid on the project, so we would want to take that off the top of our next, we have a program that we're gonna use, we have a cost estimate. Y'all already have gained a lot of that information, so we don't want to charge you extra, again, for doing that. We already have that in place, so we would deduct that off the top of our fees, off the schematic design portion of the project. So this is an exhibit 1A. This would be, once it's all sort of hashed out, we would attach this to our fee proposal. This would be our scope of services. Next step would get you, take all this into account. And then Tom and I would come up with the fee for the next steps here. I don't want to read all this verbatim to you, but a lot of this we've already discussed. And what I'd like to do is hit the highlights of some of the things we would intend to do. Obviously, we talked about replacing all the ceilings in the building to accommodate the HVAC portion of the project. And Tom can dive into any of these a little bit further. And if you have any questions too, we're available for that. But complete replacement of the HVAC system and also upgrades to the existing electrical switches. Tom would also do the audio visual component for the Board of Supervisors meeting room, and then handle any other telecom, electrical requirements for areas that would be remodeled, such as the treasurer's space, auditor space, and then the board supervisor for there as well. Phasing, we talked a little bit about that in the past, and I think we have a kind of a preliminary basis of understanding on how this should be phased. But I think what we would do is build that into the documents. I think we would put all the proposed work into one set of construction documents, and then I highlight in there the phasing that we would propose for the project, and have that bid upon. Now, there's things in the project that you might want to have a bid on, so you know how much they cost, but they could be bid as alternates, so you could take those, either take those or leave those, I suppose, at the end of the day. If you decide that the funding is there to cover the cost, you can have those in the project as an, add alternate. But if you wanted to take a little bit of scope out of that project, you could also have that as a deduct alternate. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that process or not. I'm guessing on the jail, you might have had some alternates built into the project, but it's a way to really, at the end of the day, once the project is bid, you can really determine what exactly you want to have bid, and then alternate costs also bid out. So any questions on that, feel free to email on that. And also well, here's a good example, the roofing system. We could have that priced, but if you decided you didn't want to have that included as part of the project, you wouldn't necessarily have to do that work. So. Quick blurb in here, I guess, on the American Rescue Plan funding. We could provide the documentation of what was spent on the project and have that provided for review for the funding that's being used. So that's going to be requests for payments on the projects and whatnot. We will process those and do whatever we need to do to get that reviewed and applied to the American Rescue Plan funding.
So who would do that? Would you sub that out to a legal firm,
Well, I think the legal firm or whoever would be in place, we could provide the documentation saying this is the amount of work that was done.
They just provide documentation, what was money was spent.
Thank you.
I was gonna mention just a real quick comment on the American Rescue Act and just what's included and what's not included. It's, my firm has been dealing a lot with the K-12 aspect of that, the ESSER funding, which is kind of similar. This funding appears to be a little less restrictive than what the ESSER is. And one of the things we're finding out through the ESSER process is that when you say you have a component, the HVAC system that is clearly covered by the funding. So that's like a direct cost that's applicable. Any work that you need to do to implement that, for example, replacing ceilings, replacing lights, those type of things, or things that get triggered by code issues because of, for example, you have a certain dollar amount in an area of the building you have to work on construction wise, that may trigger other code requirements to be implemented. Those things, those secondary things we're finding are also covered. Just simply because, in order to get this one item that for sure is covered, you got to do all these secondary things in order to be able to implement that. So that is one thing that we're seeing, and we're seeing a lot of, I know school districts are being a lot more aggressive in terms of what they're asking for, simply because, and again, I'm not as familiar with the approval process, but I'm assuming you have to come in an application for the funding. And I know a lot of the districts we're dealing with are including entire projects, and they're getting approved, for that funding. So just as and I understand your frustration, Gene. The one thing is that we're finding out, even with legal professionals, everybody is just kind of basically learning as you go right now.
And I'm just kind of like, I'd like just kind of a rough idea,
Yeah. So what I'm seeing is that, with the school districts, a primary thing is protection of students. So anything to do with ventilation systems and those type of things, or windows, are just an easy, low hanging fruit. I was trying to read through some of the requirements or the eligibility, it seems like that the American Rescue Act, as it applies to an entity like Carroll County, seems to be even less restrictive. So is what I'm seeing. So to me, it's like, boy, we're getting these entire projects funded, which includes sometimes fire alarm system upgrades. We have to replace, when we're doing the HVAC system, we're having to replace all the technology cabling because we have to put in different type of cabling that can live in a plenum environment, just all sorts of stuff that get triggered. And I mean, that's kind of been our experience. So again, I understand your frustration, and I know Lucas isn't here to defend himself, but as a design professional working in this environment, understanding how ambiguous some of this stuff is to all of us, and how a lot of us are just kind of going forward and saying, well, I think we're just going to apply and let them tell us what is applicable and what isn't. And that's kind of what we're finding.
Well, in today's society, it's too happy and everything is not that black and white.
Right.
Yeah, it seems like the intention of those dollars is obviously meant to be spent on the project. And, I can tell you, and Tom can tell you, I've done a couple of projects with the county in Omaha. And, we replaced the HVAC system in a few in the hospital and the jail in Douglas County, and anything associated with that. Again, like you mentioned, ceilings, ceiling mounted items, things of that nature. We replaced some rooftop units. When we did that, the roofing system needed to be replaced. That was part of it. So
Yeah.
There's quite a little bit that goes along with it. I wish I could tell you everything that we had listed here could be approved. I just can't kind of cross that boundary there. But I think Tom and I are in the same agreement here that I don't see anything that's a real red flag. I think that there's some things that are triggered by doing a project, such as ADA, and so that's just part of the project.
Yeah, and then sometimes, depending on how that item is triggered, it's worth bringing up and asking. And just saying, would this be covered? Because we wouldn't have had to have done this unless we were doing this work. And so it's just that kind of process, And to be clear, we're here to help you guys. We're just not, when it comes to this stuff, there is a lot of legalese in it. We're not attorneys. I mean, just to be clear.
Yeah.
But we can certainly help in the process, and certainly between the two of us, we've got a lot of experience pointing you in a pretty, in what we feel is the direction that everything seems to be going. I've got a meeting this afternoon with the Sheridan School Board to specifically talk about ESSER funding for projects that they're looking at, and that's kind of, that's everybody's talking about this now. So.
Okay.
So a couple other highlights on this. Then we don't feel that these projects trigger the need to add a fire suppression system to the building. And I did have a conversation with the representative for this region with the state fire marshal. Didn't get into specifics on the project, but asked general questions about what triggers that need to add a fire suppression system, fire sprinkler system. And the response I got back was that person was 80 to 90% sure that you would not need a fire sprinkler system for this project based off of what I told them were parts, pieces and parts of the project. That a lot of the occupancy in this space is business occupancy, and that a new public meeting room wouldn't push the amount of people in that meeting over the requirement that would be required to add a sprinkler system. So what I really try to do is my due diligence. I said, if it's a necessity, it's something we would really need to know up front so we could plan it into the project. And the response back was, it really didn't seem like it was a necessity for this building. And honestly, that's really what sort of reinforced my perspective on it as well after going through the code, is that this project would really not require added fire sprinkler system. So.
And that's interesting that you guys had a meeting with your insurance company, because it'd be interesting just to ask them, from a premium standpoint and whatnot, what impact that would have on your premiums, in terms of having a fire protection system in there. So, I'm not, again, not an insurance expert, but I've seen it sometimes where it drives the rate down quite a bit. You can, look at a payback of some sort, so.
And I think the way this thing is structured, you're not gonna have a major, I don't think it's gonna have a
We
big
asked them
fire.
that when we did it over in the jail in the IT area, and there was no benefit to even having it.
Okay,
And that was, small
That's right.
space.
that was the other, code and then insurance are the two things that tend to drive that,
Yeah.
so.
Sometimes the code will just tell us you have to put a fire sprinkler system in there. It just makes it easy. This one was leaning the other way to where the building isn't the size that triggers that. He didn't have enough occupants on each, in an assembly area that would trigger that either. So we're also only focusing this scope of work on a few areas, the ground floor and the first floor. Now the ceilings being replaced isn't enough of a reconfiguration either to necessarily, trigger that requirement. So just letting you know, we're proceeding under the educated, I suppose, assumption that a fire sprinkler is not required for this project. Again, scope of services, depending on exactly, what we determine needs to be part of the project. Civil engineering would be part of the scope, architecture, interior design to the extent where, that person selects finishes, final finishes for the project. And then mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineering. A lot of this other stuff is sort of boilerplate, and I'm guessing you just went through the process on the jail. Were you the overseeing group on the jail project throughout the whole design and planning phase? So you're very familiar with all of them. Yeah. So again, we're going to hit the ground running on this next project. The program we already have. We have some schematic floor plans already that we would plan to further develop. And even if it's a wholesale rearrangement of the spaces, we could certainly do that for the treasurer's space, driver's license, obviously board supervisor and auditor. I think where we left in the restroom, where we left off last time was that if we could leave some existing construction in place, I think that would be the intention to try to do that. So again, those costs don't creep up on us with the whole, gut and remodel. So we would look at it from a structural standpoint as well as needed on that portion of the work. If some walls need to come out, we would certainly look at that. But I think some of our intention is where they can stay, we would leave some of the existing walls. So again, under design development, which I think we would do an abbreviated schematic design, and I put in some dates, not really dates, but estimating time for a schedule. We have built in right now about a 6-month sort of start design to when you go out for bid process. Sounds like a lot, but once you get into it, it really goes pretty quickly, that 6 months. So we have 6 weeks for schematic design, 8 weeks for design development. We can move these a little bit too. If maybe we only need 4 weeks for schematic, we could add some more of that back to design development. But we have 6, 8, and 10 weeks for schematic design development and construction documents. So that would really start as soon as you got a notice to proceed on the project to start that 6-month process. So understanding that we're going into sort of a holiday period and whatnot, and we still need to get you a fee proposal. We're estimating that might be February potentially before we would really get going on that, on the design process of it.
So with that, you're talking basically bidding probably June, July.
July, August, yeah.
Isn't it? And we're kind of, isn't it opportune time to bid more?
This is not a good time to pray.
No, I mean, more spring, wouldn't it been?
No, I'd say if you look at publicly bid projects, we've tracked like master builders publicly bid projects, not including DOT, over the last 7 years. And if you look at the number of projects that are out, that are bidding publicly any given week, the peak happens in late January, February, March, and then it starts dropping off until you get to like a low point kind of in October, November, December, generally speaking. Kind of varies from year to year a little bit, but that's kind of the pattern. So if you can't, generally speaking, the last half of the year is more favorable for public bid projects than the first half, from the standpoint that you have more people focusing in on your project because there's less competition in the bid market. That being said, we're kind of seeing that the dates have kind of jumped up a month on us. I had a project bid here just last week, and it came in quite a bit higher. Part of it too is it was a ESSER project and had Davis-Bacon wages associated with it. So that automatically jumped the price about 20%. But yeah. So to answer your question.
I understand though, Davis-Bacon doesn't apply to these funds.
No, clearly it doesn't. Yeah, clearly it doesn't. So which is very advantageous for you guys from a cost standpoint. So what I would say is that the schedule John put over here actually looks pretty good. There is no value for you guys doing a spring bid because there's no groundbreaking. This is really interior work. It's ideal work during winter, like cold weather months. And a lot of contractors start loading up on this kind of work in the second half of the year, so they can have stuff that their people are working on over the.
Well, my concern is we got so much time to spend this money too.
Yeah. Is it 2024?
It's the end of 20.
I think you have to have it, I think 26 is when it has to be completed. Wasn't that 24?
I think 24 has to be started.
Started,
That's
yeah.
how I interpret
Yeah.
Or
it.
did we get the other 1.9 million yet?
We won't till the year after.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're pretty safe with those dates in terms of getting it done. Probably the biggest issue you have is just lead times on equipment. Hopefully, by the time this bids, we'll see more improvements on that. Right now, they've actually gotten a little worse. So kind of getting out of this, honestly, getting out of this time frame and hopefully getting some of the supply chain issues cleared up, and hopefully by the second half of this coming year, we'll be in a lot better position than we are right now.
I think you actually, did you touch out on that, or did Zach have a comment about that? There's better times to bid, take projects to bid then. I think it might have been you
I
guys.
think he did the last time. he was there
Yeah.
too, because you don't want to do it real early in the spring.
It depends on the project too, but as Tom mentioned, this is interior for the most part. So this doesn't have to have a hard start and stop date. So it's a little easier to adjust the schedule accordingly and whatnot as well. So springtime though is a really hot bid time. It's from our perspective, it's do the work over the winter time and then do our work over the winter, then get started on construction in the spring is how things tend to go. So that springtime bid usually means people are busier and their numbers might potentially start to increase from a labor standpoint as well. So I think we're on track. I don't think we can get that done much quicker than, summertime without really hurrying on the project, which nobody really likes to do.
Well, this is kind of a very invasive project and involves a lot of field work on our end. This is not, these type of remodels, especially in an occupied remodel, we have to spend time in the facility doing our due diligence. So,
right. The more we can find out up front, the fewer surprises there might be down the road. So what we intend to do is measure all the spaces and whatnot, get this building drawn up in 3D as well. So
which is huge.
Speaking of the ADA parking, if we were to do that as part of the scope, we would also either provide the survey services for that, or we would also, what's written here is the county could have a survey done on your own account and give us that information. So doing that avoids a little bit of markup on a survey. So we could talk about that more if that's part of the project. We could certainly get more into that. My feeling is that would be part of the project. I think the way the ADA code reads is when you do work on a building, you start on the outside first in terms of regulating up to requirements. So I think the parking, I think that portion of the parking lot being replaced, I think just from a conditions aspect too, I think that that would be a good improvement for the building as well, just in general, that entry drive and front entry.
We feel that we can internally handle some of these projects. Should we be looking at it? Or, and do we still qualify? That's the next trick.
Right.
That, I'm looking at the cellular repeater system.
Oh, right.
I mean, I think our IT department can probably handle that.
Well, and I think if we had that put in there, they should be going back, that company's supposed to be getting that thing set up right. We just put that in.
We can put it in here, we put it in over there.
There's for the radio system.
Radio and cell, two different things.
I thought they were gonna do the same with that.
I don't know.
That's something we need to check.
Right.
Yeah, I would say though, you're right. Anything that you don't feel you want to do at this stage, let us know and we could.
Well, I mean, it's just something that I think we have to do. I think we have that expertise hanging out there, and why wouldn't we use them?
Yeah,
That's why we were
exactly,
talking
yeah.
about the boardroom, that you said you'd be doing the video and stuff like that.
Yeah, we lay out a system, work with your folks, so.
Yeah,
Because there again,
Those guys are right on top of it, so they can handle a lot of that
we
too.
got our IT people.
Once they had a drawing, I mean, you can basically walk away from that and they can finish it from that point. They can order,
Yeah.
they know exactly what they're
Right.
looking for. So.
Yeah, so we would design and then in terms of getting it bid out or whatnot, or doing it internally, that would be, something we could work with you to get included in the documents in terms of how that's
Okay.
planned to be. Now, there's other
Yep.
kind of channels to cover costs. You can do an allowance where you just put in a number that you're anticipating to spend. And that number is built into your construction costs, but you could use that allowance to have a company come in and do all the pricing and that sort of thing. So there's lots of little adjustments you can make to the bid to sort of streamline that process, which we can help out with as well. On alternates, allowances, contingencies, things of that nature. I think really what we want to do is get you set up for success. So when it does go to bid, it's fair to everybody, and then you have all your costs covered as well. And I think that's what takes some of the time too, is sorting all those sort of factors out.
Yeah, as far as like conduit and pulling, they probably could do it, but they'd have to go buy a bunch of stuff to do it.
Mhm.
So why wouldn't you have just an outside
Put the
contractor
rough
take care of
ends,
that in, and then they're done, they walk away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So again, I don't want to necessarily read all this straight verbatim, but a lot of what we would do is get the planning done. We would keep the schedule updated. We would update the estimate of probable costs again. So from our perspective, you can have a cost estimate. Now, we could do that, or we could hire a third-party cost estimator to do that portion for the same price, really. So that's something we could talk about. Getting a personal opinion, I like the cost estimate coming from a third party that does that every day, so that it's a really good example of where the cost would be. Sometimes as an architect, I don't know 100% where labor rates are, things of that nature. So I always,
So would that be after bid, or would that be?
the cost estimate would be all the way up to bid, so you would have a good
So
idea.
the
of what-
4.4 million above where it said,
The 4.4 is our preliminary anticipated probable cost for the overall project. Once we really get into the project and we know exactly what's being done, that'll keep being updated. So look at that 4.4 as a real preliminary. I think what we'd like to do is stay there, go below that if we could, finding ways to save some money here and there when we could get everything done that you need to do. So those cost estimates get updated as we go through the design process and become more and more accurate. So before you go out to bid, you'll know pretty much how much the project should cost. Obviously, we go through the permitting process, bidding process, providing assistance. And then we would get into construction administration. So once the project is actually going under construction, we have in here on-site representation. I think what's written here is that it's bi-weekly. I think what I'd like to do is be on site once a month and then do another call-in on a bi-weekly basis. So we do a Zoom call, let's say on the 15th, and then come out to actually be here in person on the 1st, just so we stay up to speed on what's happening with construction. Again, then at the very end, the punch list. What's preferred to do is have the contractor get a punch list put together on their known deficiencies that need to be complete. We would come out, review that, and then add to it as necessary and provide that punch list. And then at the very end, we come do a final walkthrough on the punch list as well. And after that, do all the closeout documents that are necessary for the project. So I kind of glossed over a few of those things, but you've been through the process recently on the construction document portion of it. But I would say with each of these phases, I would plan to come out initially, do another kind of reconnaissance of the building, get all the measurements of the building, internal rooms and whatnot, so we can get our 3D Revit completed. But after that, we would still come out and have meetings to go through each of the areas that are being remodeled and speak with the department heads on in terms of layouts for those spaces. We took an initial kind of glance at it, but I think we need to really refine those. So really what we're planning is a couple meetings on each step through schematic design development and construction documents where we come here and meet on the project and have meetings such as this to go through what we're doing, what still needs to be done, things of that nature. Then the service is not included right now, and this can change too if you would like to, but we like to put these down just so we don't go into an agreement and not really know what's exactly planned, and then have that come as a surprise maybe later on in the project in terms of, well, you know, why didn't you do this, or you know, maybe there's different thought processes on it. Value engineering we put on here because I think by the end of this we'll have a really good idea of where the costs come in on the project. If it comes over and you do need value engineering, I guess where we'd like to position ourselves is where we don't really need to do value engineering. And I think that that's part of having a third party cost estimator be part of the project.
And that's also the reason you put alternates in. Alternates are a means of cost control. And so in an environment like this, you kind of block out things you can easily take off the project if you need to get it within budget. So it's just very volatile right now.
Yeah, I've had a few conversations with estimators that we've worked with in the past, and they're actually getting really close on their estimates these days too. They're gonna, I think, in my opinion, probably be a lot closer than I would be on an estimate for sure. But I think the point there is that they're not going to be off by any substantial margin that would have a real major impact on the project. So having that estimator involved would reduce the need for us to come back and value engineer the project later. Nobody really wants to do that. Renderings, 3D models. 3D modeling we're actually going to do, but not the renderings. I don't know why that 3D modeling is listed, but we'll build the building in Revit 3D. Tom, your opinion on energy modeling? Is that something you normally do or as an additional service?
Energy modeling is typically not required for something like this, but if it's needed for whatever reason, but I don't see any, unless you're doing a need or something like that, there's no reason to do it. Commissioning, however, is something that the energy code would probably trigger. That would almost certainly be needed.
So we take that off this way.
Well, no, we wouldn't do the commissioning. That's, you have to have that done third party.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So building commissioning, that would be an expensive accounting. Have that done. You said that it has to be done, Commissioner?
Yeah.
So the county would have to hire somebody.
That's usually, yeah, that usually goes directly. Commissioning is something that they typically have, and I'm sure you had a building commissioning done on this project as well. Because it would be required. It was just basically running the systems through their bases to make sure that everything is meeting energy code requirements.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's something that they added into the energy code back in 2012.
We would do the energy.
Like a Manure.
Oh, yeah, all that stuff.
Can you do it?
I think somebody did, yeah, I think.
Yeah, we need to.
We would do the, I think it's called contract to make sure that everything we're doing meets the.
The thing we would do is we'd help you with an RFP to get those professional services hired. It's usually like System Works or Precision Test and Balance. And those kind of folks will come in at the very end. And this is an interesting project because it's phased. So you really want to have it all commissioned at the very end. So they'll do startup as you go through on the systems, and at the very end, they'll do a commission to make sure everything's tuned in right and meet the design requirements. That's the way the state guarantees that you've met the code.
So I think we talked about already environmental testing of the building. I think that's sort of a hazardous materials test report that would need to be done. That's something we would not be providing. Furniture, fixtures. If I'm skipping over a few, I think they're obvious. We're not doing complete furniture, furnishings, equipment, all that design. Anything you guys do see here, though, you know, that you think should be on here, let me know. But the fire protection and design. And again, I think what we would do is if any of these do need to be added, hopefully we identify everything that you need to include as part of the, you know, your costs of the project. We want to keep you up to speed on that. But we will also provide a fee chart for any services that might be required. That's what we have in our statement for. But again, we would presume that there would not be any that we would, in this proposal, have everything already covered. So you wouldn't have to come back. I hate coming back and asking for, you know, any more money. You know, I try to avoid that. So I think with our number that we do provide, we'll have all of our services included in that. And again, I think our intention, I know our intention is to take the number off of what you've already paid for the work that we've done so far.
Is there a variable on these services that are started? If we go forward here, what I'm getting at is if you start putting in heating and cooling down here and it gets turned on right away and you don't finish the next level for 7 or 8 months, is there a warranty that's separate? Is there, does it have a start date? Does it have you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you're talking about a big span.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you do these phase remodels, and we've done several of these lately, interestingly, and the warranty is always something you kind of have to make sure you sit down with the contractors and manufacturers and kind of think that out. So to answer the short answer to your question is what triggers a warranty to start is when a piece of equipment goes into active use. So yes, you would have basically a staggered warranty going through the project.
Because as we phase this in,
Right.
some of the old has got to go in order to get some of the new in. So you have to turn them on. I mean, otherwise you lose your,
I think the
whatever season you're in.
the way to think about that is we'll have this phase. So you'll sign off on each phase. And I think at the end of that phase, if I'm right. I think some of those warranties would kick in.
Kick in at that. particular
When those,
point.
when those pieces are in place and ready to go.
And when we could look at different things too, we can look at having longer warranties, those type of things on systems and see what kind of impact that has on price and whatnot. But yeah, for the most part, you as soon as you start using it, you kind of trigger the warranty. That's usually the rule.
Okay. Well, we'll have a good test over here because we'll know whether we need to be looking at
Yeah.
extended warranties or not by that point.
But
Yeah.
those cells over, that's why they have them locked up, you couldn't do anything. As soon as that door opened, that's when the warranty started.
Yeah, that's part of the nice thing about the commissioning process too, is after you're commissioned, you walk away from that, they walk away from it, you have a pretty good sense that, yeah, this is operating the way it was designed. They'll kind of tweak a lot of those things. My experience with the DRF system is, most of the issues you're gonna find in the first 6 to 12 months. So, and after that, we just put one in our building and we had a couple of shakedown cruise type of things in the first 6 months. And then after that, it's been a pretty good system for the last 3 years, really no issues.
Yeah, it's usually one of the last things to really come online too at the end of the phase. Is, I think the HVAC a lot of times dictates the overall schedule. So when they're done, it's sort of towards the end of that. Walls and things like that will probably already be in place, but I think the electrical, mechanical, things like that wrap up the phase, and then that's when that would trigger that, the date.
So now, the construction part of this, like the treasurer's office and the auditor's bids are doing them in different phases. Do you foresee us bidding those separately then?
No, I think what our intention to do is everything that's listed on here, having a complete set of drawings. So everything would be in a set of drawings, but in that set of drawings, and I've done this on quite a few projects, it seems to be, the real method that's required on an occupied building is you have to phase the project. So I've done a number of phasing plans. So we would have everything included in the document so it could all be bid. And so the contractor is bidding the work, but what they would know is how they need to phase the project. That would allow their subs to say, well, I need to do my part here on this part here, and then I go away for a little while, then I'll come back and do this over here for a while, so that helps the contractor get their pricing when they know what the real phases are as well. And
You don't want to break it out into separate bids because then you have different contractors. Then you do have issues with warranty. Then it becomes.
I didn't do it, you
You
did.
want to have one next to the
Well, and I guess kind of one of my thoughts is, I think probably one of the areas we gotta start on first is drive down, take that wall out, put a temporary wall in there for the auditor, get that set up. And I would like to get at least our table or whatever we use set up with our audio, even if it's, so it's set up, and then we don't have to have the outside walls done right away, I don't think.
Right.
I mean, but I want to get where we're operating out of a place to.
yeah, and I think that meshes into what we talked about with starting the HVAC portion of it as well on the lowest floor, if I'm right. So you start with ceilings and whatnot, and mechanical equipment, electrical equipment, you get started on a lot of that. Lowest level. And if we wanted to move up to this level, that could be maybe the second step, if I'm saying it correctly. So you start with the HVAC, you start with the ceilings down on the lowest level, move up to this level. That would be the ceilings, and then also the public meeting room and the temporary space. Third step would be going up to the first floor, doing those spaces, moving, down into this area and whatnot.
And then once we get everybody moved, then we'd have to take out this wall out and expand that out.
Exactly. Yeah, right.
There's a lot of thought process that goes into the phasing on these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
You guys will be very involved.
You just touched on something that I hope everybody realizes. There's going to be annoyance phase and there's going to be a disruptive phase. And when you get in the electrical side,
Mhm.
we're going to have some offices that are totally disrupted for maybe a day. And we're gonna have to fight that battle.
Yeah, well,
So I think coordination is gonna be a big deal.
Part of what we do when we're designing this is, you know, as we get into the design and we start seeing how this whole thing comes together, we're gonna start identifying just those things where it's like, wow, the only way to do this is gonna be to take an outage. It's gonna last, you know, this many hours or over a weekend or whatnot.
We may have to close this building for a day.
Yeah.
It may have to happen.
Yeah.
So
So
just
there's a
making sure
lot of
everybody's
parts.
aware of that.
yeah, there could be shutdowns. What I've seen as well as the contractor doesn't like to spend a lot of time on those shutdowns either. Because sometimes it means that they're shutting that down during the day and that shutdown the work they're doing could last into, you know, after hours. They want to reduce that as much as possible. So they try to get as much done as possible to switch over and have that happen quickly. And if there is an outage, it's usually, well, maybe that, you know, we're gonna shut the power down at 3 o'clock and it'll be back for you the next day.
Yeah.
Something to that effect, but that's built into the specifications that we put together. As a contractor, we need to let you know when those outages are to occur in advance notice, what the duration of those are, and keep, whoever wants to be the designated representative for this particular project, the contractor would need to keep that person up to speed at all times in terms of what they're doing. It would never really be a surprise, you know. Yeah.
So next thing, you are going to put this into a document, then?
Yeah, I'm gonna clean up this exhibit a little bit, and I'll get it to you so you can look it over. We are in the holiday season. I'm gonna get this right back to you though, so you can have that. And then, once you agree with our scope of services that we intend to provide, we'll refine a number for you for the fee, and then we'll get that to you. This will be attached to the fee agreement as our scope, but then we'll have a fee agreement in there as well. So the fee for the project is based on these scope of services. And really what, we already have a contract in place, so this will be an amendment to that contract.
We'll have to probably let our attorney look at this.
Absolutely, yeah. So want to get you enough time to do all that, and
So when will we have the projected engineering cost?
our fee
Yeah.
for engineering, I think what I'm hoping to do is turn that around for you right next Monday at this time. But that would be based on getting this cleaned up, getting it back to you. I don't perceive that there's anything we really need to add to this scope, but just maybe a few clarifications on a survey or something to that effect. But we've already started our thought process on the fee, and we just needed to really make sure we're in agreement with you in terms of what our scope is. So I think Monday would probably be a date that we would intend to get that.
So your intent is to include the parking lot ADA?
Right now it is. That's included.
That's gonna be in your
yeah.
scope. Can we have it both ways, what the cost of that, the services of just that is broken out?
Sure, yeah, we can get you a fee on the civil engineering portion of that, yeah.
Well, the only thing you change, you said you're taking the renderings out of it, right?
Well, renderings are an additional service.
Yeah, I mean, you said you're gonna take that,
I'm gonna take the 3D model.
or 3D now.
Yeah, because we're going to do that. We're gonna do the 3D modeling.
Yeah.
I had
I would
that, I
insist.
crossed, I crossed the wrong one off.
Yeah, the 3D models are just the way things are going these days, and they help us quite a bit to.
Yeah, it's just when it comes to messy remodels with the HVAC ductwork and all that.
Such an,
Yeah.
you have to, I mean, those little 2D CAD drawings.
Oh, yeah, I get very picky about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll break out the parking. Do you want that broken?
I would like to see that. I don't know if anybody, I mean, yeah, included and
That
without,
probably is not a bad idea.
just, I mean, maybe Zach has a connection. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll break that number up for you. So with that,
So in essence, we should tell Zach not doing more work out there.
He's not gonna do any more work out there.
Well, I mean, even through spring.
No, he's not gonna do any work out there. We're out of money.
That's a sure way to make sure.
The west side costs twice as much as what we thought, so.
yeah, I think something to keep in mind too is there could be a little bit more of a slope. In my opinion, if you ramp, you can call it a ramp, which is, I think it's 1 in 12, 1 inch in 12 for a certain distance without needing handrails up to the building. So I noticed, you know, with what you have right now, you have the entry doors and then it kind of slopes down and there's a little bit of a curve and whatnot. I think just that portion can ramp up a little quicker than that 1/4 inch per foot. So I think the reason I'm bringing all that up is our survey crew and our civil engineering crew would really look at that hard to make sure that we're meeting all the ADA requirements, but not doing a ton of work to get you there.
As I look at it, it looks to me instead of having a part one on that end and one on this end, we may have one in the middle because of the sloping. Without really attacking the crown part.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
also like to know the definition of front door, because it wasn't this door, the front door.
This
at
is
one time?
originally the front door.
Yeah, so what's the
No,
definition
no,
of
it
front
wasn't.
door?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
This was originally the front
the
door?
street
supposed to be
went
the front
through
door.
there and that was the original front door.
Well, that was a street there.
This
This
was-
the front door
No.
was always here.
No, this is.
Well, if you look at
original.
that picture right behind you, it could be.
Well, I understand that, but
Yeah, as we've always been told, that is the original. front
Yeah,
door.
because if you look at that, it says Carroll County Courthouse and then it says on that side of the building.
yeah, but there's another picture the other way.
Yeah.
I just would like clarification.
Yeah.
We need to
Yeah.
get heavily involved over there, or could this
Well,
work?
I think the question would come back in terms of if that's the main entry door, does that entry door meet ADA requirements? So in terms of a closer
Gotcha.
or opener and all that sort of thing, what is the path, to get there? Honestly, I think in the spirit of the code, you probably want to provide a couple parking stalls for this level. So that would be over on the east side and a couple stalls for entry on the upper level for people coming for the majority of their.
That's why I want that cost busted out, just to see what that part
And
is.
then if you have the door issue, then you've got to make sure the elevator is up to snuff. And that just, that one thing leads to
Yeah,
three
I'm just,
real quick.
Yeah, well, and to, the spirit of the ADA code is getting somebody close to park to the front door.
Yeah.
Inside the building and around that floor, access to floors above and below, and then access to restroom facilities, so. My feeling when I think about all that combined, that's all happening up on the upper level.
Yeah.
With the restroom remodel, and the elevator gets you down to this floor, so. I think that's pretty common in most buildings. Obviously, some of these restrooms, day one, are not ADA accessible. You still will have accessible restrooms. Not a huge building. You'll have those on the main level. And then down the road, if you decide to do renovations in the future, the way the code reads is some of the funding for those future renovations should be applied to ADA in the future. On an existing building.
just the initial cost estimates, we're running out of money quick, so.
Understood. Yeah, and we're gonna do our best to keep that as the high number and then go down from there with the actual cost.
Thank goodness you don't have data space. We just need to deal with.
The what? Oh, yeah.
That is just a killer.
The labor.
Okay,
See you next week, maybe.
Thanks,
Perfect.
guys.
Yeah, well, anybody doing anything exciting for Christmas or heading out of town or?
so
is next week?
coordinate, make sure we put that on the list for next
Well,
week.
if he gets me the letter, I will put it on the agenda. If I don't see the letter, it won't be.
So if I get that, well, I would intend to, would you prefer we're here or would you prefer we called in for that?
Since you guys are so far away, it's, I think zooming in would be okay.
Okay, just good to know.
And so you know,
Well, I mean, I know it saves expense all the way around.
Yeah, exactly.
Friday is our holiday,
Okay.
so I would need it by Thursday to get it in the agenda.
Thursday. I think we can accommodate that.
If not, then we'll just have to.
We've got a good head start on it. I think if we know that everything in here is what you agree to, then we're most of the way there already. Monday shouldn't be an issue.
Have a nice trip to Sheraton.
Yeah, actually, oddly enough, for meeting an OCO under touring a project, we get down in that Clark for 'em.
That's an easy trip to you.
Yeah, so it's a nice hop down, done until Thursday. My son just came home on leave, I got a grandchild. top of that, we bought a new truck. So.
Big deal to me.
Yeah.
Dogs are tougher than kids.
Okay,
Guys have a happy.
Thank you.
yes, Merry Christmas to
Merry
you.
Christmas to you guys.
All right, let's go back to number 4, first read of ordinance number 35.
So, I've amended this to take into account the changes we are making on, or hopefully you guys are making on the county level. There'll be some changes at the city level. They're, I believe, adding some to Ward 1, or I'm sorry, they're adding some to Ward 4 and removing some from Ward 1. I think 4 grew, so they're gonna add, or I'm sorry, 4 grew, so they're gonna add more to 1. Ward 1. So Ward 1 will gain a few and Ward 4 will lose a few, I think is the way they explained it to me. So this does not take into that right now because they haven't finalized theirs yet. But I thought we could have the first reading of ours because ours is changing precinct 2 and precinct 3. And basically what I did is I left the legal the same, except I included in precinct 2, shall include, and then the area where we took out, I said to exclude, and then I did the legal description on what we're taking out of there. And basically a carbon copy in precinct 3, and instead of saying to exclude, it says to include that same area. So that's what we're gonna be changing in ours. And I'm assuming I'll get the information from the city of Carroll on their changes as well.
So
For our
does
second
the county
reading.
attorney have to approve it or not?
No, this is a board, it's an
Okay.
ordinance that the board approves. So that's, I guess if you want to call it the first reading, unless you want to read through the whole thing, but the only changes I did make was precinct 2 and precinct 3. I hope to have the legals for precinct 1 and precinct 4 from the city for our second reading, but
Okay, so we need a motion to approve the first reading.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded, being it's an ordinance, it's roll call, right?
well, you're not approving that ordinance, you're just approving the reading.
Okay,
And,
so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary, motion carried.
And then we'll schedule the second reading next week. Like I said, I should have the legals from the city to include with that as well. That takes care of that.
Okay, next we have is the city county precinct agreement.
So this reads very similar to the ordinance. It just has precinct 2 and precinct 3 on the agreement because those are the only 2 precincts that vote in the city of Carroll. So in the past or the last 10 years ago, when they redid the voting precincts, they had this agreement in place, and we are required to have an agreement with the city in order to have our rural voters vote in town. So just looking for a motion to approve the agreement, and then I'll forward it to Laura at the city, and then the council will take action on this, I believe, tonight at their meeting.
So moved.
It's been moved and second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion carried.
Jean, there's a place here for you.
Stephanie, are these being passed right now?
Yes.
Yes.
I looked up and conservation pays the,
The 500.
yeah, they pay that, but I thought you guys maybe want
Oh, that's at Western Island.
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
see what's going on.
Yeah.
There you are, Neil. Okay.
All right, and then now we go to CDBG down payment assistance program. We need local planning and administrative assistance contract. This is in regard to our new housing deal. We need to do this administrative contract. And this is the same document what we did in the past. I'll make a motion that we approve that.
I'll second.
Been moved in second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion carried. And then we have environmental review record. This is also in regard to that housing, right?
Correct.
Any some motion to approve it?
So moved.
Been moved in second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion carried. Okay, next we do committee reports.
I can
I'll
go.
go first.
I'll settle it, I'll go first.
Last week, Thursday afternoon was supposed to be decategorization, lack of quorum, so that's rescheduled in a couple weeks out. This week, tomorrow is the executive board landfill meeting at 6:30 a.m. Wednesday. I'm gonna do the punch list at the jail at 8 o'clock. That's all.
Mine's
You're doing-
quick.
You're doing the radio? Yeah.
Oh, yes, I will be doing very good. NT and newspaper.
Yeah. Last week I attended just the City of Carroll City Council meeting.
Ditto.
This week, all I have is the jail punch list on Wednesday.
I can go next. Last week I had the conservation board meeting on Monday evening. And I'll start passing some things around here. The one of the discussions was the 2021 revenue. And I'll pass these around. The total for the cabins for the year was $43,000. That's an increase of $7,000 for the year. The shelter houses was a little bit off this year, but they're anticipating good revenues going forward just from the bookings that they have for the east side shelter house.
So back up, 43,000 was total rental for both.
I'll
cabins.
pass them around.
Okay.
You can take them off of there. And here's the facility rental revenues for 21. So these are 2 pages, and it gives a comparison to the last 2 years. The Sauk Rail Trail continues to do well. It didn't do as well as last year. Last year was a big year at $21,960. This year it was $21,550. So I'll pass that around.
Any reason why they thought the cabins were down a little bit,
The cabins are up.
or the other one? the
Rail
shelter
trail.
house?
Shelter house
Was
simply
it because it was
because,
closed?
yeah, because it was closed down.
Okay.
The camping revenue for the year was $203,000, which is last year, that was the biggest year they ever had. The biggest year they ever had was last year before this year, and that was $169,000. So I mean, it was up about $4,000 last year over the year before, which would have been the biggest year. So I'll pass that around as well. Yeah, the cabin rentals was really good again, and I think they're booked up. That's the revenues. Then there was discussion on Well, basically, the cabin discussion was whether to provide Wi-Fi to the cabins. I mean, they're really roughing it, but they really want Wi-Fi too, right? So,
They're not roughing it if they're in a cabin. They're roughing it if they're in a tent.
yeah.
That's roughing it.
So I think they're figuring out how they can get Wi-Fi to those. And it does, I mean, I think I don't think they're going to, I think they're going to go indirect, so wireless. They're going to try to get it to the cabins on a wireless feed. And then Ben Wallace from the DNR was in to talk about the Swan Lake Fisheries. And I'll pass this around. This is, it's somewhat disappointing that, you know, since the fish kill we had in 2016, I think it was, you know, really the numbers have not come back. The only numbers that have really come back and significant has been the bullheads. So, so that is about the first 6 pages here. The last pages are, and Rich, you can probably, you get up around Blackhawk, so you've probably seen that structure on the south side, the inlet of the lake. And so Ben brought a presentation. It would be similar to this. This is what it looks like now after it's completed. But basically you've got the marsh here and the lake here. And what they're doing is they've got a massive sewage pump that they pump the water from the marsh area into the lake. And they pump it to the level of the marsh. When the marsh gets high, then they're moving water into the lake. And the goal of this is to reduce sedimentation in the lake. I mean, that's always been the goal.
Equalize it out so it doesn't move that way.
Right. And so what they're thinking about for Swan Lake, and it sounded like Ben was pretty optimistic about this happening. They're going to basically do this in reverse. So the south side of the lake where the outlet is.
Overflow.
Yeah, so they're going to take the outlet, they're going to put a structure in there and basically reduce the water in the lake. So this is, you know, when this structure here up in Blackhawk, they want to improve the vegetation on this side of the lake and do some purification. So they always want to keep this lower. They want to move water into the lake. That's another reason why they did this, so that they can reduce this in the marsh and encourage vegetation. With Swan Lake, they're going to take water out of the lake and put it into the marsh so that they can encourage vegetation into the lake to improve the fishing habitat that way. So we'll send that around. I think that was it with that. And it sounds like there's funding available for that. It sounds real good. I think the last time we talked, they were going to actually dig a dredge through the marshland out here, but they found out that the outlet of that marshland is actually higher than you know, so I mean, it wasn't going to do any good. So they're actually going to be, you know, pumping more water out of the Swan Lake into that marsh area. And then there's an overflow on the south end of that marsh.
And they don't think there's enough vegetation on the west side of that to increase that fish habitat?
No, I think, well, there is, but there's not a lot. I mean, if you go out there today, you see all the Lola water lilies out there that they had. That was a discussion, part of the discussion, how that thing has really increased in size. But I think mostly, you know, like around the jetties and that type of thing, I think they want to be able to increase the vegetation around those so that increase the fishing in those areas. Chris Whitaker was not there from Region 12, but he did provide the last survey they did for the 5-year plan. So this will, a revised version of this will be going out to a select, no, I'm not gonna say a select, a random people in the area so that they can fill out this survey and return it. I have it if you want to look at it, but otherwise, let's see. Fisheries, old business, the trail bridge on the south side of the Hazelbrush secondary roads completed that. I guess it looks in really good shape. They saved some money by doing that, and secondary roads did a great job of improving the support structures on that bridge. They talked about the tree removal, but then I also got an email on
Stump grinder.
Thursday after the storm came through, they had more trees down, and so they're going to be doing more cleanup. And that way, it didn't, it was just trees came down. Probably the biggest damage was done to the Christmas decorations out there for EMS.
I'm sure they took it.
That's terrible.
Even though they're well protected with all those trees, I'm sure they still, I thought
Yeah.
about those too.
Yeah. The trail project update, and I think if you saw the paper, they've started the fundraising for that. Sounds like that's going very well. So I don't know that there's any more updates I can give on the trail, that we haven't already heard. The Wi-Fi discussion on the cabins, the revenue, and then Jason did share some preliminary budget discussions, but nothing to really report on there. That was on Monday. On Wednesday, had the East-West Nishnabotna fourth quarter meeting. It was held in Oakland, but I participated. I just, with the weather changing, I thought I was going to save 2 hours and not drive down there. And actually, there was the good discussion. I mean, there's updates, and I'll just hit to the bare bones of it. They ended up with more projects than they have money. They ended up with some projects that came under the estimate. So they're able to do about 3, 4, or I think it was 3 small projects, so she does really well down there. I'll tell you that. Larry Weber, you two guys, I know where Larry Weber, he presented on Hamburg. Hamburg is almost kind of by Hamburg is the confluence of the Missouri River and East-West Nishnabotna come together down there. So there's for many years has been massive flooding down there, and they did do some levee work down there. They did put some levees in along the west side of Hamburg to actually between the interstate and Hamburg to provide protection to the city. They created a borrow pit, which is a economic development, a nice pond that they never had before. And so they're doing a lot of retail around there. They're going to be able to do a lot of retail. The Iowa Department of Economic Development with Debbie Durham, they funded a lot of this, and they're continuing to do a lot more funding from the Iowa Department of Economic Development for Hamburg. So it's been a long due down there, and Larry really laid that out really well, how they're doing flood mitigation down there and how it's turning into a good thing for Hamburg. And then on Friday, met with the executive committee of the North Raccoon Watershed Management Coalition down in Perry. with Jonathan Gano from Polk County and Katie Rock from the NRCS down here in Polk County. The fourth guy lives in Jefferson, and he didn't have power yet on Friday. They're still out of power, but we had a good discussion, and we actually met to plan the meeting for next month. It's going to be a hybrid meeting, and there's going to be 2 locations where people can go to. So we're trying to get attendance, improve attendance, so that we can get a quorum. And they're going to have one site is going to be up at Kings Point up at Storm Lake, and the other site's going to be here in Carroll. But we're going to be doing the Zoom call from Carroll, and then anybody that can't make it to those 2 sites can participate that way. So we're hoping to improve the attendance. Kyle Ament from the Iowa DNR was at this meeting, and we're running into both problems on both of the east-west Michigan. Our coordinator for the Raccoon Watershed Management Authority, I mean, he's been done for months because we ran out of money. The one, Carol Morgan, who is the coordinator for the east-west Michigan, her last month is in June. So there was discussion in both of them how we're going to be able to continue her work down in the east-west, and how the North Raccoon is going to fund a coordinator. So Kyle Ament from the DNR said that there is 319 funding available through the EPA, and that it's accessible, and they will fund a coordinator. So resolution will be coming up. He's going to come up with a resolution that the board can the board can approve, and then we hopefully can go forward and have a coordinator for the Raccoon River Watershed Management Authority. That was my week. This week, I guess I'm just going to be wrapping presents. So,
Okay, I will go next. Last week, I attended a Zoom meeting with the regional office down in Kansas City. Our Head Start director out here at Carroll, Tanya Weber, was given also now the regional award for Administrator of the Year. So I did attend that. And then Wednesday I had a conference call with Zach and I, or not Zach, Scott and I with Renee. And then on Friday, I did have the Yes Center board meeting.
Forgot that phone call too, Courtney.
Hmm?
I forgot that phone call too.
Okay.
Anyway, we went through the financials. Everything's good there. We had a presentation from Winter Stave on our audit. We did get a clean audit. I did attend this by Zoom, and they will be sending us a copy of that audit. We did vote and move premium approval of our health insurance premiums. Also, the accounts receivable. This place is, Friday they had 15 in there, and they said there's some days they had as high as 18, and we're only licensed for 14, 15. And but they have that revolving door today, so some come in, some go out. So it's been very busy up there. So busy that in the 21 years that I've been on this board, I have never seen the accounts receivable as high as they are right now. Normally they run between 25 and 30,000. Right now they're $164,000, and those are basically current, except for one county doing a budget amendment. We are expecting that we're shorted on our state allocations. They will be getting, we're expecting that's going to get changed, that we're going to get some money through the COVID on that. The state is going to make up some of that while we got shorted. So the average for the month was 14.2. We did also approve purchasing 2 more vehicles. We bought these are both used vehicles. And one is from Plymouth County, is a Durango, and the other one's from O'Brien County. And they both, both of them do have cages in them. This week, I have, other than problems. Come on here. We were supposed to have union negotiations today, where the union negotiations have been canceled today because of health issues with the union negotiator on the secondary road. Tuesday, I've got CADC board meeting. Wednesday's the jail punch list. And that, besides whatever else pops up out of the sky. So,
For the North Pole.
now he's gone.
I can talk about next week.
Yeah,
Planning on doing the appropriations resolution for the remaining of the budget. Did you find out, you were gonna check into whether you can do that? Is it blanket 15%, or can you pick and choose?
well, you can, but she said that it's best to do a bunch.
CADC will be here for their funding request. We'll have the second reading of the ordinance and possibly SEH and bill day.
And also.
Oh, and I have a liquor license for
And I
house.
think, and Adam Schwartz is going to do a presentation on how to do it for us. At least I told him, to try to get on. All right. Rich, you got a report?
Yep, one committee, Iowa Workforce. We were 35-minute delay. We couldn't get a quorum, even though we did it by Zoom because of the weather.
What day was that?
It was on Wednesday,
Oh,
the
it's on
day of the,
Wednesday too?
yeah, we decided not to do it. We probably would have got out of Omaha about 3:30. Would have been a very inopportune time, so I'm glad we didn't go. But very disheartening that we have to wait so long to get forums. We had to call people on the phones and try to get enough people. It's just, they have no interest in this. It's all being dictated by the state. They have the funding. They set all the rules. So it's been hard.
Didn't they go through a process? Didn't we approve a process that they
Yep, to back off from the quorum,
Back
and
off
we
from the quorum.
still struggle.
still couldn't?
Still
So
struggle.
what, can you recall what that was again? Because I was.
We went to let me think about this a second. We
Maybe
went
Courtney, because you
to
remember that?
I remember it got reduced. but I
a
don't remember the
third,
numbers.
we went to a third of the members. Plus one. So you take your total membership, a third of those, and then add plus one. But anyway, we finally got there. We did get from the Iowa Job Corps made a presentation. They talked about their 16 to 24 age group and their disability side. It was income based. He gave us the lowdown. That was pretty informative. The Iowa Department of the Blind, they also gave us a good presentation. Learned quite a few things there. The one-stop operators have basically been supported by the Title I program. We have now moved that to Title I, the 2, the 3, and the 4 will all support the one-stop operator, which is kind of relieves some funding for one, because they're doing the bulk of the work and had the least amount of funds. So we kind of freed up some of their funds. They can continue to do better stuff, better on their programs. Western Iowa, they're having trouble getting instructors. That's a work. They're having a workforce issue for a workforce program. So it's kind of ironic. That's all I had last week. This week, all I have in front of me is I will be in to help with the punch list on Wednesday.
That's it.
Supposedly, it's on my calendar. I haven't-
I
Haven't
haven't
seen
seen
it.
a peep about it, so I guess I.
About what?
I see.
Okay. Any comments from those online, Ben?
There is no comments today.
If there's nothing else, we need to have a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
And that is per Iowa Code Section 20.173 for union negotiations. It's been moved. Is there a second? And it's seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Roll call.
Oh, that's right. We gotta do roll call. Roll call. Yes.
Miners. Yeah, Rebels.
Yes.
Hausman.
Mustard. Johnson.
Yes.
Houseman.
Yes.
Shepherd. Okay,
Yes.
motion carries. We are in closed session.
Okay, Ben, you're gonna close down now, and then we probably, you won't have to fire up again after that, because we'll be adjourned right after this.
So you guys don't need to have a motion on the live stream to close the meeting at all after your closed session?
We probably will, but I don't think that needs to be on this part. Okay?
All right, perfect. Thanks.
And shut down for the rest of the day.
Thanks, Ben. Let us
Thank you.
know when you're offline.